Cloud. Okay. All right. So what we have on the board today, I told Mr. Ryan Alexander that anyone who missed last class, anybody, we have skipped ahead. People following on the Zoom link too might be like, well, on the syllabus, it was supposed to be the game last class, the in-class competition. We've bypassed that because it's kind of nonsensical and we want to get to the real bread and butter of the class. So if you'll see behind me, I have on the side, much bread in need of buttering, butter knife, assembly required, question mark. Do we need to assemble butter knives? They usually come fully assembled, correct?
Generally.
Okay, it's been confirmed, no assembly required in the butter knife, but much bread to butter in 3 iterations today. The southern position, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Texas, followed by the northern response, followed by Lincoln's first inaugural address. Okay. So, literally for everyone with us in person today, welcome everyone here. It's always so wonderful to have you live, and welcome everyone on the Zoom link. That's all we're going to do today. It's a very theoretical class. Last class was heavily chronology based. And that's what the next month is going to be, basically, through the end of the war, just what happened, the facts, the statistics and data concerning the battles, generals, that kind of thing. But today we're going to look at ideology, strictly speaking. Okay, so the first thing I want to read to you from is the Declaration of the Immediate Causes, which induce and justify the secession of South Carolina from the Federal Union, issued the 24th of December, also known as Christmas Eve, 1860. All right, they didn't say, I'm saying it's also Christmas Eve, in case anyone was confused. They didn't say that. They were Grinches that time. They didn't want, I'm including that fact. Now I have the whole document for you, as I do for the Mississippi Declaration of Secession, as I do for notes on Texas, Northern Response. And really, I have 9 pages of lecture notes today. I think 5, more than half, what is 5 and 9, 55% of the lecture notes are dedicated exclusively to Lincoln's first inaugural address. Are we going to be reading word for word from all these? No, but just certain selections and points. It begins by saying this: in the year 1765, that portion of the British Empire embracing Great Britain undertook to make laws for the government of that portion composed of the 13 American colonies. A struggle for the right of self-government ensued, which resulted on the 4th of July, 1776, in a declaration by the colonies, quote, that they are and of right ought to be free and independent states, and that as free and independent states they shall have full power to levy war, conduct peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. Why do they begin talking about 1776? Who cares? Why do they do that? Ryan Alexander has coffee. He has answers as well. So
I'll go with the answer, because they are saying we're the inheritors of the spirit of 1776. It is us and not whatever's going on with Abraham Lincoln and his cohorts.
As usual with him, perfect answer. Right. It's literally the South Carolina, and that's the theme, the general thrust of their Declaration of Independence is going to be, we're the new founding fathers, period. And actually, please do not overcomplicate it. Earl, you wrote that Barbara cannot attend today, at least for the first part. She's co-paper. She has to finish up. Well, thank you for that note, and we await her arrival with great joy. It'd be awesome when she can join. But thank you for letting us know. And thank you again, everyone who does join us on Zoom. It's so wonderful. It feels, I think that's the greatest silver lining of the pandemic, that people that can't attend, we're still all together. So it's very, very nice. Glad to see you all on the computer. That's it. Number 2. Then they continue, point number 2 here, right? Then they continue and they say the same colonists declared the right to leave the government whenever it became destructive and not serving the purposes it was created for. They list the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, by which the Treaty of Paris, 1783, by which the colonies gained self-determination, become what we will call now the United States of America. So the first 3 points, if you want to keep score at home, I use that cliche a lot. It's actually very annoying, but it works, right? You get it. You can keep score at home. I've given you 3 kind of points so far, 3 total points. What do they say so far? 1, we're the founding fathers. 2, hey, remember why they broke away? Because the compact wasn't working anymore. It was destructive of the ends for which it was designed. 3, 3, when the colonists do this, when they defeat Cornwallis et al., break away from the tyrant King George III, they are at that point, quote, free, sovereign, and independent states. They are saying the Constitution, the very thing by which big, bad, scary wolf guy, Abraham Lincoln, knew King George III wants to keep us as part of the US, the same document he's using to justify us not leaving, saying we can't leave, we're not allowed to leave. That same document says that indeed states' rights is the original layout of what the US should be, this grand confederation of independent states bound in a contract, the one that is not indissoluble. It definitely can be dissolved and must be if it becomes destructive of the original purpose for which it was created. Okay. Thus were established the two great principles by the colonies, namely the right of a state to govern itself and to the right of a people to abolish a government. All right. So point number 4, moving along this train, is like, so that's, they're saying like, you guys get that, right? We're all independent states. And the great principles of that independence, that which we reserve the right to do, like a bar owner reserves the right to kick out rowdy patrons. If we're at a bar right now, it's my bar, I have this real nice chic German beer thing, all of you would be gone. And I reserve that right to refuse service to anyone for whatever reason. And I don't have to even explain it. So they're saying like, that's the thing that we're allowed to do, right? Just immediately, right? We're govern ourselves and we can abolish whatever other external ties as we see fit. And if anyone responds, oh, that sounds kind of willy-nilly, they would say, no, it's not for no reason. Let's tell you what's going on. Here is the one place where South Carolina talks about slavery, because please note, slavery is the main cause of the war. It's intertwined with everything. It's not the only cause. The next declaration of secession I'll read to you from Mississippi is scandalous. And it's just a total embrace and love of slavery. This is not that. South Carolina takes a more kind of philosophical, states' rights, founding fathers, argumentative, intellectual approach. And yet they still say that Article 10 of the Constitution guarantees those powers not given to the federal government will be left to the states. All right. Article 10 of that Constitution by which we have all these rights guarantees that any powers not expressly delegated to the federal government should remain in control of states. This is actually a very Catholic principle. This is the Catholic principle of subsidiarity. The 2 great principles of Catholic social teaching. I'll give you 7. Just forget that for a second. Just focus on 2. There are 7, but I mean 2 big ones: solidarity and subsidiarity. Like everything in Catholicism that is and or. Is Christ God or man? He's true God and true man. Catholics are supposed to practice both solidarity and subsidiarity. Everyone gets solidarity. Can you say solidarity is globalism? I wouldn't, but you can go down that road. Solidarity means we're all one. All people are brothers. We should look out for each other. We're all one human family. But subsidiarity says this: whatever can be accomplished on a local level should be. Okay. If I have a problem with you and the mayor of Moscow can solve it, why would we call Boise? It's dumb. And why would we call Washington, D.C. for argument in Latah County? This is dumb. They should handle it. Whatever is low. And you know what? Maybe you should even go to Latah County. How about handle it amongst yourselves, like normal people over coffee? Whatever can be done locally should be. You only go up the ladder, like cases of the Supreme Court. They only arrive there after all the appellate circuit courts, whatever, right? Reject them and whatever. There's a certain process. This is what this says. And what they argue violates that contract is the Fugitive Slave Act. Okay, a thing that us, all of us, anti-slavery, are like, well, slavery is horrible, right? We'll say that from our perspective now, and thank God. But they say it doesn't matter what you think of slavery or not. The government has no right to tell southern states where slavery is legal that if an escaped slave escapes the north, that the federal government can say, well, they have to be captured and or they yes, excuse me. Hold on a second. I'm totally backward. Hold on. Wow, totally backward.
Is that from Maria? Cool.
I completely lost my train of thought. I need using class.
Trying to keep it over here away from the stairs. Conflicting sounds. What? Why are we losing sound?
Yes. Okay.
We can do it ourselves in the federal.
Yes. The reason I got so I can't wait to watch this back later. Like, what happened in that moment? It's complete blanking. South Carolina, despite being for slavery, right, does not like the idea of any kind of federal oversight of the Southern institution of slavery. That's what I was going. I got super confused. I'd be like, well, of course they like that because they want to have slaves as property. they want that property scandalously, right? That horrible definition of human beings as chattel slavery returned back to them. That's why I got confused. Okay. All right. So South Carolina has a lot of different legalistic types arguments. What else do they say? Moving along. No, man. Moving, my paper fell down the stairs. Like whoever was on Zoom about the stairs. Down the stairs it goes. Okay, they blame Abraham Lincoln too, of course. All right. Abraham Lincoln at this point has been elected 6 weeks prior. All right. Someone help me out. I talked about this last class with the class before that. What did I say was Lincoln's big problem?
That he trying to appease the South, and he was elected, that he waited until his inaugural address to, that he wasn't out to get slavery, that he wasn't.
The lack of communication.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to actually change the order of things in a way.
Perfect. You're both exactly right. And exactly what you said and then what you said about lack of communication are both perfectly correct on point. Lincoln has more progressive views than the like outright racists of his time that looked at African Americans as subhuman, as kind of horrible things. He was not an abolitionist though, and he could have made that known to people like, okay, I'm more tolerant and more progressive on this question than other people. However, I have no desire to actually interfere with the Southern way of slavery. He will say that today on March 4th, 1861. We're going to hear him say that when we go through his inaugural address. But exactly as you said, I mentioned in a previous class, he could have done himself a favor by doing something like a listening tour or going to the South and having town halls and saying, you're from Columbus, South Carolina, what do you think? And you could be like, Mr. Lincoln, is this true? And he'd be like, that's not true. Or, this is my position actually, you know? And maybe he'll be a typical politician. He'll be accused of lying or obfuscating or something. Lincoln doesn't even take the effort to clarify his position. So, sorry, go ahead.
Politicians did do that, right? At the time, they traveled and they talked about.
I think politicians, I think that's always been integral to politics. The stump speech is born in this era of like train travel exacerbates in a positive way in the post-war means it makes it more accessible. Like one of the most famous elections of like cross-country travel speeches is the election of 1896. And William Jennings Bryan, you're going to crucify, I think he makes it, we're going to crucify humanity on a cross of gold. He was a very big silver guy, silver minds. And he goes and like enrages populist opinion, like he builds it up. Think like Trump whipping up his crowd, he's chanting the slogan. He was like the first populist, William Jennings Bryan. And it's not just him in 1896, it's the war era and before of like, yeah, we're going to travel, maybe it's by train, if trains aren't yet available, by horse, by whatever, town to town, and simply gather people in the town square. And I'll propose this to you guys. Our technology is so much better today. Duh. Who would disagree with that? I'm talking to people virtually online now. Betsy Johnson has joined the Zoom. Everyone is on the Zoom and we're live. It's fantastic. What is the, hi Betsy, hello to you. I can read the Zoom chat from here. You know, maybe I blank out halfway through and like, what am I even talking about? At least I can read the chat from here. That's positive. Let's celebrate the positive. What is the problem with our society today vis-a-vis technology and paying attention, which maybe they were better at back then despite a lack of technology? And maybe you see where I'm going with this. So today we have better communications, better telecommunications, technology in general. Right now, if people wanted to, like 30 million people in the world could watch the Zoom when we post to YouTube. We don't have that kind of following, but I'm saying it's possible, and that's unprecedented in world history, right?
Right.
And that seems like, oh, today is the time to spread a message. I'm just going to make a TikTok video. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone gets what I support Idaho farmers, buy more Idaho milk, and it's spread out through all of Idaho. Very simple, immediately, you know, on the telecommunication waves, all the social media platforms. That would imply people are better at communication now. I think they're not. What is the problem? Why? And I said, go ahead.
The overabundance of communication cheapens it.
Perfect, brilliant, perfect answer. Everything you said is perfect.
And snippets.
And snippets,
Like the
that too, yeah.
10 second.
I have nothing, I have no time for a Twitter soundbite yet. If you're talking for longer than 10 seconds, I'm already lost.
Exactly, and so, and plus the misrepresentation that you get by pulling out those snippets from.
Exactly. Out of context, perfect. You guys always crush in this class. I have the best class ever. I don't have to do anything. Like I can just blank out randomly because you guys have all the answers. So good. the overabundance, especially, yeah. It's like, I imagine today, if I wanted to give a speech at Friendship Square, half the people, whoever would show up are gonna be like, whatever, right? Oh, what? What? Okay, like half of that, maybe someone's talking on a cell phone, just like distracted, because this 10 minutes have like, no attention span. Back then, and I'm not saying like, oh, grandma said, the old days were better. I'm not doing that kind of nonsense. Like every generation has its problems. I'm just saying, when people wanted to give a speech and they came to town square, there were no phones, there was no billboards, there was no distraction. They actually listened to what that person said. So what I'm saying is, Lincoln, despite the paucity of communications today, if he actually went and talked, people probably would have heard what he said, and they would have hated him and tried to stone him or something, or they would have, but they would have heard. And I'm saying that I think actually today it's harder to be a politician because, oh, this guy's speaking law, I'll watch it on YouTube later, kind of watch it while I'm listening to music or whatever. Like people back then, if someone was coming, like this is the only time we're gonna see them. There's no video, it's now or never. It's a cool event. Our town is so freaking boring. We're literally a one-horse town. Like a one horse walks down the middle of the road, we watch him for entertainment. It's so boring here that when someone comes, we're actually going to turn out and listen. So maybe he would have had a better chance to like be heard. I don't know. Earl asks, writes, anyone can have a platform. What they say is not necessarily accurate, truthful. Earl, you are so correct. What you're saying is so obvious and so powerful. Like everyone knows this, but it's not said enough. Exactly. Someone said once, like 3,000 books are published every day. What a tragedy. Like how many of those are good? I'm serious. 2 for real. I'm not I'm an author, right? And maybe I'm the most garbage author of all time. Maybe I'm like one of these 3,000 that should not be published. Like totally fair criticism. People say your books suck. Great. That's totally fine. I'm not like trying to like, oh, only I should be allowed to write. I'm saying that everybody thinks they can do all this stuff now, and that's bad. And then maybe I'm one of these deluded people too. Maybe I should shut up. But it's like, exactly, everyone, and it's much worse. At least people who write a book, even a terrible book, at least wrote a book, you think, right? Maybe it's all misspelled and they just spell check it and they didn't really write it. Or they're the worst part. Maybe like talking to a thing and like text to speech in their book. That's brutal. That doesn't count. But like Earl, your point is spot on. And I want to like focus on that freaking awesome comment. Yeah, like how many people have dumb channels on whatever and they just come on and talk? How many people live stream nonsense? There are, I think all of you know this, but there are people that have videos on like YouTube channels where they just live stream, just talk about life, and you monetize their account. Hey, thanks Betsy for your $10. So I was saying about trees. Yeah, today I was out in the forest and like, ooh, this bear was all like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like they just do that for 2 hours. That's that kind of stuff. So Earl, you're 100% correct, sir. But was it easier for people to get away with falsehoods in the past because fact checking was challenging? No, Betsy, because fact checkers are all liars. So less fact checkers in the world is better. Yeah, you're probably right. Okay. But I think people were also less stupid in the past. And I really mean that. Like, I think there was this idea of like education is a serious thing. And people that would go to listen to a political speech, are there going to be people that just like, I'm just laying on the corner of the street. It's noon. I got my keg. That guy's going to talk. Cool. I'm going to, saunter over and whatever. And like little kids are coming to listen to speech. Yeah. But I see that the kind of like informed voters actually took that more seriously, I think, than we do. So they would know if a guy was like, oh, and Lincoln's actually a lizard. But today, like people literally will say things like, Hillary Clinton's an alien. Actually, well, he said it on his live stream. So I think we're much, much dumber. Snake oil has always been around. It still is. Exactly. So let's do a scientific experiment and control for the immutability of snake oil and say that it's always present. And I would say that it's an interesting balance that Betsy is correct. Today we can fact check snake oil. What happens when the fact checkers are snake oil salesmen themselves, right? Is Hillary Clinton actually a lizard? I don't know. Fact checkers say probably. So at that point, like that, I don't know. I was just going to say that. Well, Betsy, you did it. I said it first. So be faster next time. Then they blame. Thank you always for you guys keep this chat popping. This chat is, and if anyone wants to monetize my account, only $50 donations, please, minimum.
It was another problem up with him waiting for his inaugural address.
Go ahead.
So maybe everyone else got this, and it just didn't, but it wasn't televised. So it's not like the whole country heard his inaugural address when.
Yeah, but how did it get disseminated to the whole country super fast?
Newspaper.
Yeah, they heard it the next day. I mean, they didn't hear it live, but so what? I mean, like, I often will hear something that's fair enough. It's not like today when everyone can tune into C-SPAN or whatever and just see the president talking live, but it's like it basically was live. I mean, unless you're literally in onehorsetown.com, where it takes like, you know, a week for the paper, all the big cities right off the press, what he said, you know, so it's like, I know what you mean. There's a little bit of a delay, a little bit of buffering, like it's not as quick as today, but I wouldn't say it's super.
But there's also the inability to read facial and body cues in a particular. So
I love where you're going with that. I don't know how important that is though.
I don't know, you can look at a person and think, okay, I believe them.
What if they're like, yeah, but see, it would have to be, I'm gonna be really facetious and like, I'm joking when I say this next, but no one's gonna be like, I promise to do this. I promise to do this. Or like, hey, I'm gonna, what you guys talked about, the initiative you want, we're definitely gonna do that. Like, they're not doing facial clues. Like, I mean, like how enthusiastic he says it, or like, there is the show, anyone ever see the show Lie to Me? There's a show called, you've seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really very, very interesting. This like lie detector, human lie detector guy who worked on crimes, could like read criminals, and like, that's like deep level stuff. I mean, you have to get like trained by like the CIA, FBI, blah, blah, probably for like a million years. Normal people can't read that off someone's face. Like, I can't tell someone's lying except by like intuition. Like, oh, I know that guy. That's definitely BS. He didn't catch a fish this big. He's a liar. But in general, like, I don't know, that would help being there, like, to what? To know. I mean, again, I love how complex your point is. It's very interesting, but I don't agree. Try to convince me otherwise. Why would that matter to read his body language?
So when you say you can tell someone's lying by intuition, right? The fact is that we take in more stuff, that we process more stuff about a person than what they're saying. We see the way they're moving, we see the way they're looking at other people, we hear their delivery. We hear the conviction in their voices, and yes, all these people are trained, not to the level that they're trained today. But all these people are trained to be orators, to give good speeches. I get that. But there is a time when you're listening to someone, or when I'm listening to you, right? Half the time you say something and I know it's funny, I'm laughing, no one else is laughing. So I'm like, I'm picking up something from you that you're giving me that says things a joke. Okay, no one else is laughing, so I'm gonna continue on, right? So I'm not convinced. So if he went like town to town and gave his opinion, or if he stayed in Washington and sent out missives via the newspapers, I think it would have actually made a huge difference.
Okay, fair enough. I'll just say about the point you made about my sense of humor. Wait, no, it's not defended. I want to say that everything is funny, and if it tears down the house, it's that I've lowered the sense of humor to the level of the common person. If no one laughs, they didn't get it. It's too sophisticated. Yeah, exactly. I wrote on the chat, Betsy 1, me 0. I was destroyed by Betsy Johnson as you were talking. Betsy Johnson destroyed me, reduced me to dust, because she wrote, I was going to say that, and I mocked her, and I thought I won. Like, well, Betsy, be faster next time. And she's like, I was going to say what Dave said. So I just got owned by Betsy. 1-0 Betsy. Betsy, I will enact my revenge. I will make a better comment and award myself 2 points as the moderator of the chat. But it's 1-0 you for now. If you gloat while you can before I score points against you. Yes.
We can have debates though, like, for example, with Frederick
Stephen Douglass. Yeah. Well, no. Frederick Douglass was the black man. Frederick Douglass is a former slave. He wrote excellent expositions of slave life after he became a freedman. Stephen Douglass, I think Frederick Douglass spelled his name with 2 S's, Douglas with 1, yeah. Stephen Douglass. Stephen Douglass was the presidential candidate, debating Lincoln in the Senate in Illinois in the 1850s, 58, I believe.
College.
In what?
At Knox College.
Knox College, let's go. Good things happen there. You want to party, you go to Knox College. That's my thought. Sophia, this day has just become complete. Sophia, you've arrived as always perfectly on time. It's like it's a movie set. You arrive and like, hey, go, like perfectly on time. What we've talked about so far, as you can imagine, a lot of jokes and nonsense. The serious stuff is that South Carolina says that it's a philosophical high interpretation that we're the new, we seceded because we're the new 1776 Americans against the new King George III, Abraham Lincoln. What they say here, President Lincoln doesn't do his speaking tour. For 25 years, this agitation has been steadily increasing until it's now secured to its aid power of the common government. What agitation? Abolition. Observing the forms of the Constitution, a sectional party has found within that article establishing the executive department the means of subverting the Constitution itself. And then it goes on, blah, 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 blah. Government cannot endure permanently half slave, half free. A war must be waged against slavery until it shall cease throughout the United States. South Carolina immediately destroys me in my defense of them. Like, they didn't talk a lot about slavery. Oh, wait, the back end of the whole thing is all about slavery. And I'm not accusing them of pretending. They were sincere that, like, we're mainly interested in states' rights as a philosophical thing. They can't help themselves, though. Slavery had so polluted the Southern economy. It was so hard to look past the idea of, like, well, whatever the human rights abuses, if these people work for free, who cares? That kind of terrible, truly like biblical Matthew 6:24, you can't serve God and mammon. Like, literally, we worship money so much, we'll enslave other people and pretend they're not even people because that makes us money. They continue with that. And so they say, actually, it's about slavery. Here's how they conclude, though, verbatim. They're going to move to Mississippi. We, therefore, the people of South Carolina, by our delegates, appealing to the supreme judge of the world, that's kind of very deistic language for God, obviously, for the rectitude of our intentions, have solemnly declared that the union heretofore existing between this state and other states of North America is dissolved, and that the state of South Carolina has resumed her position among the nations of the world as a separate and independent state, with full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. We sincerely hope Kentucky will join our coalition and bring that Jack Daniels. End quote. All right, so there's South Carolina. Who is the best? So the best actor or order gets elected. I wanted Matthew McConaughey to run for governor of Texas, if that means anything. He's decided not to, in useless, trivial facts, but I would love to see him be governor of Texas. I don't even care what his politics are at all. I couldn't care less. Matthew McConaughey's in the ballot, you check it. No questions asked. Mississippi, here's their points. All right, Mississippi is shameless. Here's what they said. Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery. The greatest material interest of the world, its labor supply is the product which constitutes by far the largest and most important portions of commerce of the earth. And then they go on to, like, you can read it for yourself. These are all online. Like Avalon Project, Yale has all these documents. They go on, like, do super like high, like they go full racism and talk about how, like, oh, the Africans actually like being enslaved. They work better in the sun. All this kind of like any kind of like justification for the earlier point that I made, the shameful, like, we worship money, we don't care what the human cost is, whatever. And this is not something obviously particular to the South. This is the terrible, sad story of God have mercy on us humanity, fallen humanity, where it's like, yeah, we'll pay lip service to human rights, but if I can make money, then what are human rights? You know, it depends, and all this, and I'm technically opposed to blank, we would never ally with that country. They believe all these evil things. They're giving us how much money? Where do we sign? Like, they're our number one ally. We see this all the time, right? This is not news to anybody. But just know, the first state that secedes, South Carolina, they include slavery. They want to be more philosophical. Mississippi is just like, that's all we care about. We're not even going to pretend. We're from Mississippi. We can't read. We're not going to pretend to be intellectuals. Give us a truck, like tons of chewing tobacco, whatever alcohol you want. It can be like freaking the grossest moonshine, also from Kentucky. And they just like, that's all. The slavery is the only thing they're interested in. They have no desire to even pretend. And so they conclude with, our decision is made. We follow their footsteps. Who? South Carolina. We embrace the alternative of separation for the reasons here stated. We resolve to maintain our rights with the full consciousness of the justice of our course and the undoubting belief of our ability to maintain it. Whenever you're not sure if your cause is just and you have doubts, just say that it's just, more so, and people will believe you. Like, if you're like, I am trying to found a society like the Audubon Society of Animals, but for punching raccoons. And I'm getting a lot of pushback from animal rights, these crazy wacko granola whale hugging people who are like, you can't punch raccoons. I am sure of the justice of my cause of punching raccoons. Please donate here. So yeah, obviously when people are projecting how just they are, they're probably doing something bad, right? If a person walks around, I'm a good person, please don't talk to that person. Like, go the opposite direction, right? Dave Schmidt, and sadly, we still hear these opinions about slavery today, even here in Moscow. Dave Schmidt, you've gone full political on the current landscape in Moscow. And I do know what you're talking about. I can't mention it for the Zoom chat, but there is some kind of kerfuffle. Dave, is that a correct word to use? Kerfuffle for people located near Friendship Square, if I remember correctly, right? And some kind of like argumentation about pamphlets written in the 90s with historians at U of I. Is that, am I understanding your thing correctly, Dave? I'd love to get a yes or no. Yup. When you say yup, period, I feel like you're like right on, brother. Like you're not just like, yes, like you nailed that. All right. All right. I freaking told all of you. You know what I'm talking about or no?
No.
Okay. How do I put this in diplomatically correct phraseology? People who live near Friendship Square, okay, who school it, who've closed Bloom Restaurant. What a bunch of BS that is. Oh, ooh, closing Bloom because it was too good at food. I don't know why. We need a library. Okay. Who might have judged? Who might have judged? Apparently, one of yes, go ahead.
I heard that their aim is to buy as much as they can around town so they can control.
I think that's correct as well. Which I support that. I support that completely.
Why don't we do
Just
that?
kidding. We need to get the oligarch money out. We need to have like a guy like
Are we
Catholic.
gonna let them do that?
We need to have Bill Gates, Catholic Bill Gates show up. And be like, here's $6 billion for Augustins to own Moscow and rig every election. Joseph Stalin, may God have mercy. I pray that he repented. May God have mercy. One of the most evil leaders. I mean, do I have to say that? But he'd have a funny quote. He's like, in an election, it doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the votes. So we could do that in Moscow. Yeah, everyone can vote, and they'll be like, no. So Sophia was elected mayor of Moscow by 3-1 votes. 6,000 ballots were ineligible. Sorry. Okay, everyone calm down. The library is good. We can get memberships, Dave Schmidt says. Betsy Johnson says. Oh, Southern Slavery as It Was the name of this controversial tract. Scandalous tract. In that debate, I support the U of I professors fighting against the Bloom closers. Totally. The library is good. We can get memberships. Betsy, why the exclamation point? Betsy, I'm going to put the score. Amazing book collection. It's 1-1, Betsy. I get a point for that. It's 1-1 now, me and Betsy. However, I spent more time at Bloom. Okay, 2-1, Betsy. Spending time at Bloom gets you a point. Betsy, you're still in the lead in our score. Okay. Let's get back on topic, I say. Texas secession. Texas secedes, remember, in February, their state number one to secede. Who remembers? Anyone? Number 5?
It's 5.
You're close, closer.
4. 7.
Now you're cool. Now you're on 7.
Really cool.
You're number 7. South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, 6. Texas is 7. And then Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, Tennessee rounds out the 11. Texas is the 7th state, the last state to secede before Lincoln actually takes office, because the next state, state number 8, April 17th, 1861, is the Commonwealth of Virginia. Virginia is for what? What is their state slogan? Anyone knows? Virginia is for lovers. That is their state slogan. They didn't realize lovers of bad ideas. That was what they loved. Virginia is for lovers of insanity. Virginia is for lovers of bad positions too. I like Virginia a lot, actually. I only joke about things that I really like. I think I told you guys that before. That's why I've never roasted you. You should feel bad. Texas secession. It would be if we did a roast at Augustine's, like a legit roast. That would turn. Do you agree with me? I want people to wait on the chat too. If we did a roast at Augustine's, a Comedy Central roast, and it wasn't obviously they're so vulgar and terrible, so we wouldn't do that. It would just a roast where we actually like no holds barred make fun of each other. It would turn out probably very horrible, right? Because here's my thought, and tell me what you guys think. We have this amazing collegiality at St. Augustine's that I mean from the bottom of my heart. I know I'm the boy who cried wolf, always joking. This is dead serious. All the people that I work with, the students, the parishioners, it's a great, true family atmosphere. I think if we did a roast, people's feelings would actually get hurt, and it would be bad, correct?
Yeah.
Like, that would not be a good idea. Like, please do not. Betsy, why were you suggesting a roast? It's 2-2. It's 2-2. It's tied up. Betsy, roast idea fails.
Why don't we roast Betsy?
Why don't we roast Betsy? That's a point to me. 3-2. Why do we not roast Betsy? Because she's unroastable. Betsy Johnson is the most intelligent person I've ever met in my life. She's unroastable. Maybe only comparable to Dave Schmidt. I don't know. I want to do Betsy versus Dave debate. On Betsy versus Dave debate on do snapping turtles live too long? For an hour, because Betsy and Dave are so intelligent. They would have an hour of counterpoint to why snapping turtles should or should not be allowed to live as long as they do. Okay. All right.
I want whatever's in your coffee.
My enthusiasm is all natural. It really is. I'm actually very proud of that. Like I had a high school in sophomore. I'll tell you two fast stories. We're doing great on time. Today's more of like, we've covered two good things already. I promise we'll be back on topic. I, for the record, don't care if people smoke at all. I don't care. I've never smoked anything in my life. I love beer as far as like fun things go, like whatever to relax. I'm a huge fan of beer. I think I've mentioned that before. Are they yummy? Betsy, huge, that's 5 points to you. I'm down 3-7 now. Betsy, that's an amazing point. I love beer. I've never smoked anything about anything. Like I actually would like to smoke a cigar, but I'm like, I'll break my streak of never actually smoking something. But for whatever reason, when I was in high school, a sophomore, freshman year, this teacher who looked back on was very schoolmarmish, right? Like, how dare you kind of person. She pulls me aside. She's like, I'm just gonna ask you straight up. Have you been smoking marijuana? I'm like, I turned my homework in on time. What is this, right? No, I was a 14-year-old kid. Like, what are you talking about? I didn't grow up in a place where I even like, what is marijuana? But so I went to college and we had this team introduction. Everyone has to get up and talk about who they are. I'm like, I'm Ryan Alexander from Arkansas, simple bio, whatever, right? Afterwards, a couple weeks later, one of the older guys, I was a freshman then, of course, one of the seniors, he goes, he's like, I just want you to know, like, there's some kind of stupid cliche, like, we're all a family now, we're a team, like, we all know each other. I want you to know, like, it's so awesome. And you and the rest of freshmen, everyone loves you guys. You're like our little brothers. You're a really cool guy. I just want you to know that on the first day when you stood up to your bio, everyone was like, man, I bet all he does is smoke weed all day. I swear I've never smoked in my life. I would tell you that I've never had. And so it's like people often, exactly, like there's nothing in my coffee. I'm just naturally this weird or happy or whatever you want to call it. There's nothing in my coffee.
Self-amused.
I heard a story about Franz Kafka once, the great writer, that he was writing a story once and he was writing something and it was so funny to him. He was like cackling so loud. His neighbors, true story, called the police on him. This was so loud. And I was like, I've done that before. Like I'm preparing something I'm writing, I'm like cracking myself up. I feel like if you crack yourself up, people like make fun of that in a sitcom, like, oh, wow, you think you're so funny. That's the greatest life. I love when I write, I'm like, that's hilarious. I'm like, I'm like dying laughing. Like I remember once, like this guy, this is the last diversion. You don't need to, Betsy, thank you. This is the last freaking diversion. We still have 50 minutes, but it's the last thing. Barbara Aston's gonna be on the chat soon, okay? And I want to get back on topic. I read online once. I remember I laughed so hard. This is not going to be funny. I'm giving you a fair warning. This is a weird thing that you just find weird things funny. But I laughed so hard that my ribs almost popped out of my chest. I was just like, it was pure bliss. I actually fell on the floor, like dying laughing on the carpet because they were talking about Gare du Nord in Paris, which is the northern train station. And on the bottom was, amongst all the facts and stuff, like Gare du Nord has this many trains, whatever, there was this note on the Gare du Nord method, which was like, apparently at Gare du Nord, pickup artist guys like to go to Gare du Nord and stand by the trains and talk to pretty women coming off the train. And I'm like, hey, can I take you out for a coffee or whatever? Just like do pickup stuff. And it was called the Gare du Nord method. I remember like dying laughing, like, the Gare du Nord method implies an actual method. That's not a method. They go to a train station and talk to women. That's not what is this method? Oh, they do this, they bring flowers, they have like music playing. The so-called Gare du Nord method is not a method. It's show up at a train station and talk to women. I remember like falling on the ground laughing, like, how is that any different from just talking to a woman anywhere? Like, it's not a method. Like my friend, like Joe's like, oh man, I'm trying
I'm trying to meet, I'm trying to meet girls, I'm striking out and dating. You have any suggestion? Oh yeah, try the garden or method. And he's like, all right, pen and paper out. What is this? Well, when you see a woman that looks attractive, go and talk to her. Thanks for nothing. It's like, it's not funny now. Like I lost it. It's terrible. All the benefits to the healthy. She's better selection. Betsy Johnson, you are on fire. You're up 17-3. It's like a football score. Betsy, can I monetize your life somehow? I want to monetize you do a live stream. Turtle talk with Betsy. Texas secession. All right, they begin with a different route. All right, they begin with a different route. The first thing they say is they're not allowed sarcasm. They're like only serious discussions. So to follow their lead, only serious stuff. And they say, look, unlike the founding fathers, how are we different? How are we different? How? Unlike the South Carolina founding father people and the Mississippians who are all about slavery, all the Southern people are going to do this thing like we're the new colonists. What is Texas going to say? We're exceptional, an exception to the rule because of what?
Is it because they were already like independent and then found their own country?
Spot on. Brilliant, perfect, 1,000 points to you. And it's here as well. All around. Very well. Very good job. That's exactly what they say. Like we're different between 1836 and 45. Remember the Alamo? I say that as a question and as a slogan. The independent Republic of Texas, the Mexican-American War, yes, Tejas y Coahuila get incorporated into United States. But despite that, they're like, we had this independent character before, right? Okay. Then they say a bunch of really awful Nazi type stuff and racist things. Dead serious, like kind of like, oh, the African slaves again like it. They actually like being enslaved, like total. It's obviously scandalous, but it's also so intellectually stupid. No matter, it's hard for me to imagine as a historian, even if you were the slave owner guy who's like, I worship money, I'm admitting I'm a horrible person. I don't know who could admit like, oh yeah, that guy likes not having his freedom. Like, and I know that like, oh, they said this, that was the point of the propaganda, but it's just so disingenuous.
But Abraham also owned slaves.
Yeah, and that always, the Old Testament is so interesting. How can I answer this question properly? Like the Old Testament is the word of God, okay? But thank God for Jesus Christ. Thank God for the incarnation, because I think like enough cannot be said about the darkness people were walking in before Christ comes to earth, right? Before God comes, and that's why I think the greatest heresy probably is Unitarianism, where it's like Christ was just this Buddha, like great man. It's like, then he's just like this prophet and whatever. Like, no, he's God. Like God himself, literally from his own mouth says like, don't, and he says, right? And people say, oh, Christ never said, he never spoke against slavery. He always spoke against slavery. He always said, you're no longer a slave, but a brother who was baptized. Just because he didn't say politically, like do a slave revolt, it was probably because that's not the point of Christianity. It's about the kingdom of heaven. Your salvation is not here. But he spoke against slavery. He was super, who people call pro-woman, and like he was super about all the kind of good like virtues of equality and things that on the other end can become so, like out-woked into like a nonsense land. But like, thank God for the coming of Christ. On the Old Testament, what I'll say is like, okay, Abraham had slaves. There's also polygamy in the Old Testament. Should Catholics support polygamy? I don't think so. And why did God allow polygamy? Probably for the same reason he allowed Old Testament slavery was people were such scumbags. In fact, what does God say to Moses, I think? What does Christ say about Moses? Out of the hardness of your hearts, he allowed you to divorce your wives. But he says, anyone divorces their wife commits adultery. It's like, yeah, they're allowed everything in the Old Testament. They did genocidal stuff, polygamy, infanticide, all crazy kind of stuff. And it's like the only good thing is like, since you guys effed this up so bad, Adam and Eve, thank you, mom and dad, first parents, since you threw us into this darkness, humanity is going to be so dark and awful, and only because of God's gratuitous goodness, right? John 3:16, God so loved the world. Only because of that he'll send us a savior to finally get it straightened out. Like the fact that Abraham had slaves, like that, I never understand that argument. It's like, so what? He also had 40 wives. I don't want to put, that's incorrect. I never want, especially with sacred scripture, I don't want to, have incorrect statements. But a lot of those guys are polygamists, right? A lot of them. I think Abraham was, right? How many wives did Abraham have? At least two.
I think he just had his wife and then like his servant.
But he had a servant that he hooked up with, right? And the Ishmael, yeah, like no big deal, right? So he's a wife and also concubine, like all this kind of
The
nonsense.
church fathers have different opinions on who sinned in that dynamic, though.
Go ahead, talk to me. Go ahead, give
Well,
me the church father opinion.
So, some of the church fathers were actually so staunchly for Abraham's righteousness that they said, this is all Sarah's fault. This is not Abraham's fault. If he was just listening to what his wife said, look, like God says your descendants are gonna outnumber the
You know,
stars.
the church fathers were all stupid white men, so they're all old white men.
I feel like
I don't
that's similar to how. like,
St. Augustine said it. There's some pictures that say otherwise about him, so.
No. I'm obviously, I hope you guys can still recognize my sarcasm. Like,
Yeah.
like I actually in many ways am like very woke, I think, in some ways. I hope all I am is Catholic, but my wife got her PhD before I did. I totally believe women should have equal pay for equal work, blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of, I am not some like reactionary, like, oh, you know, the man is everything, women are nothing. And I love the church fathers, but that comment was, I'm purposely being sarcastic. That can never be a serious comment. Like, this guy doesn't matter, he's an old dumb white guy. Like, that's not a serious, I'm joking when I say that. But on the Old Testament, Betsy has to weigh in the Old Testament. See if she gets or loses points. Dave Schmidt writes first, the South delayed using slaves as soldiers because if they were good soldiers, Southern philosophy compromised. Fair point. In fact, the proposal to use slaves as soldiers comes first from a guy you can write down if you want. We'll talk about him later in class, but Patrick Claiborne, this Irish Protestant guy, not a Catholic. So an Ulster Irish guy, Cleburne, and Robert E. Lee, in fact, like agrees to this later in the war, but it's already the horse is already out of the barn or whatever. Like, this is March 1865. The South is going to lose. So it's like, okay, if you guys actually were, a lot of Southern guys at the end say like, we'll free the slaves if we can have our country. We actually want the states' rights stuff more than we want slavery. So if the slaves are freed and we keep independence, that's better than being even reincorporated back to the Union, even with slavery. But it's like, well, you guys should have done that earlier. And you would have won mad woke points later. And then people would have been like, oh, they actually weren't that racist. They tried to repent from the racism and they actually said, oh, no, let's just do everything new. Independent South, and let's just no more slavery, right? Why didn't you try that early on? Maybe it would have actually helped. But it's already way too late. Betsy says, in the Old Testament, we see many problems that come from polygamy. I'll be honest with you, I never would have guessed that problems would come from polygamy. It sounds like it would be a good arrangement. So I have no idea why. I just think like, what would be the problem? Why would like 4 women have to fight over one guy? Why would that make them jealous? Why would it make the guy a total scumbag? Like, the fact that I have to go back, Betsy, I'm gonna go fact check that because it seems like polygamy was a blissful arrangement for all people involved. The Old Testament shows our need for salvation. Indeed, I think that's perfectly put, Betsy, in all seriousness. Yeah, beautifully put. It shows how effed up we are and how terrible we are. And even the chosen people, right? The Jews in the Old Testament do some of the grimiest, most awful. Isn't that what Christ says at one point? We're like, oh, you know, Jerusalem, like you stoned the prophet sent to you. How I wish to gather you as a hen gathers her chicks. Like, you're the worst people. You guys are awful. You guys are always, you know, disobeying. You stiff-necked people. That's the whole Old Testament, is how every single time that story when Moses goes up the mountain, they start worshiping the golden calf. And that's us. That's all of us, right? Like, I'm not doing a biblical exegesis here or whatever, and I'm certainly not qualified to, but like, we're all the Jews. We're all the chosen people in Christ, brought back into the full covenant. We're all the worst scumbag type people. That's why I said earlier, people are like, oh, I'm so good. I'm so good. Like, you're probably the worst person if that's your self-assessment.
I have a question. You asked us to remind me about cotton.
About cotton. Thank you. Please continue to remind me in subsequent classes, because I'm serious. Thank you. We'll talk about the cotton crisis, especially in the early part of the war, when we talk about internationalism. I can tell you what's going to happen now. In the syllabus that I still haven't printed for you, but I promise I'll try to soon. We're going to be talking about cotton. Where is this? Let me see when. Right here on February 9th. Okay. And actually probably earlier. See, I already skipped over the in-class competition. We're also going to skip over the in-class quiz. I don't know why I have that listed there. That's total nonsense.
The competition would have been fun.
We're going to do the competition. We're still going to do it. I actually wanted to have the competition be Civil War based. So like Sophia had this great answer about, I think it was Texas, you knew that about the independent republics. We covered that. I want the in-class competition to be people being able to comment on the Civil War and not have it be just like comment on turtles and nonsense like that, which is extremely entertaining. But I want it to be on topic. It's always good. So if everything gets bumped up, actually probably Monday, February 7th, we'll be discussing the cotton crisis, internationalism. Okay, so Texas says that. And Texas, again, when they go full racist, full Nazi, they literally say, the white race is established like all of America. African race has no agency in their establishment. This is a free government that all white men, and I'm not being sarcastic, like all white men kind of, you know,
comment. It's actually verbatim from the text. In this free government, all white men are and ought to be entitled to equal civil and political rights, and that the servitude of the African race is mutually beneficial to both. Okay, right? Sure. That's great, right? We should be free. Those guys shouldn't, and they agree with us. They shouldn't be free. I mean, this is just like the most like kindergarten level kind of analysis. Okay, so there you go. Now, what does the North say? Let's butter that bread with the butter knife. No assembly needed. 2, Northern response. In response, recapitulation of what we just talked about. Number 1, South Carolina, they do talk about slavery, but it's mainly states' rights. They try to be high-level philosophical. We're the new founding fathers. Mississippi goes full slavery. Texas goes full slavery, full racism, but they include like, well, but our justification is not from the founding fathers. Like both South Carolina and Texas share Mississippi slavery as the whole South does. South Carolina goes 1776 is our root. Texas says the Alamo is ours. Those are our founding fathers, those guys. All right. Okay. The southern states seem to be in a convulsion. Robert E. Lee wrote to his son Custis. My little personal troubles sink into insignificance when I contemplate the condition of the country. Okay. Alexander Stevens. We haven't had enough racist commentary in this class today. Alexander Stevens, who's the Confederate vice president, will say, quote, the Confederate government's foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, but slavery is his natural and normal condition. So again, I told you in this class, my goal as a Civil War historian, as a professor, is to avoid the Twitter historical stuff, to avoid the nonsense of like slavery was the only thing that mattered in the war. Nothing else mattered. The South were just evil racist guys. That's all they thought about. That's false. To avoid the opposite though, that wasn't about slavery at all. Actually, that wasn't even an issue. They didn't care about that. But to show for the 1,000th time, slavery is the most important issue and the causing factor of the Civil War, but we need to talk about so much beyond that. And there were tons of people in the South. Remember, 4% of Southerners owned slaves. The people in the western part of Virginia, these white guys, yeoman farmers, were so not racist, they seceded northward. It's not as simple as it's made out to be. That's what I hope I'll share with you in this class. But I read these scandalous comments, and they are scandalous, just to show you, like, but yeah, like that was the idea too. There were these people that really believed these kind of horrible ideas. That's also there. What is the shocking punchline though? What is the shocking thing you have to consider? Who also believed this?
Lincoln.
Everybody in the North. I had a professor once say, and he was actually spot on right. He's like 99% of the people back then, North and South, would be considered like canceled and racist today. They were all identically racist. People in the North agreed the exact same horrible sentiments that whites were superior. It's like, well, we shouldn't enslave blacks, but they totally thought the exact same stuff. So don't think, oh, the North, like, I'm not going to play that high horse. I'm a Northerner in Pennsylvania. Oh, we were so good. We were so pure. Like, yeah, right. No, thank you. And the abolitionists, God bless them. They were good on not being racist. They also wanted to kill everybody in the country. Also bad, right? There's just the good and bad. It's not that simple. It's, your Catholicism will help you very much in this class. We're all sinners. Betsy Johnson, Betsy, the game's over. You've won. It was 17-3. I'm gonna declare CNN is projecting Betsy Johnson as winner of election. Okay, let me see. To spell check this, can't have this misspelled. CNN is predicting Betsy Johnson winner of election, 92.3% precincts reporting. All right, Betsy, you've won. I concede. Reporting. Betsy said she wasn't running. That just earned her the suburban mom vote. So 97%. They want people that don't claim too much power. Betsy, you would. I concede. I'll do my concession speech soon, which actually my concession speech happens to be, ironically, interestingly enough, Lincoln's first inaugural, the same speech. Like, who would know that? I didn't like copy. I wrote this, and it's the same exact thing. Okay. In the North, what's the Northern response? Well, people like Crittenton. Remember, Crittenton is compromised hard in the lines of 1850s. Like, okay, let's try that again, but no one is there. And a lot of people in the North begin to see things kind of as fait accompli, an established fact that it's already done. that, okay, well, I guess we're moving towards something, but no one knows what it's going to be yet until Fort Sumner actually breaks out. And please remember from last class, if there's one thing you missed last class, Ryan, I think it was that Lincoln's brilliant geopolitical acumen, to where he does not evacuate Fort Sumner, forces the South to fire upon the North, and then he can always claim, and rightfully so, to the powers in Europe who both sides are looking to for support that they started the war.
That was in the McPherson stuff.
Good, yeah. If McPherson said it, it's probably true.
I would agree.
Yeah. March 4th, 1861, Abraham Lincoln, first thing he says, I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the South where it exists. I believe I have no lawful right to do so, no inclination to do so. So it's like the third thing he says. After, in compliance with the custom of as old as the government, after saying like the BS stuff, like, I hereby solemnly swear to execute the duties of my office, all like the pro forma stuff. Like if I was giving a speech and like, Mr. President, Mr. UN Secretary General, like, so really the first real thing he says, his opinion is, I'm not going to do anything with slavery. And he says that especially the right of each state to order and control its own domestic institutions according to its own judgment. Okay. And I denounce the lawless invasion by armed force of the soil of any state or territory, no matter what pretext, as the gravest of crimes. So he opens up by saying, this is March 4th, 1861. This is, and I hate that so much, by the way. I'm like, oh, she clapped back on her. I hate that. That is so gross. What does that even mean? Oh, Jennifer Aniston, this actress said something about Brad Pitt, and she clapped back. Can you explain it to me? I don't know what that means. Me neither. All of us. No one has any idea. This is March 4th. This is still a month and 8 days, 5 weeks before Fort Sumner. Nothing has happened at this point yet. 7 states have seceded, ending with Texas, number 7. Virginia is still in the Union. I'm not going to interfere with slavery, he says, and any kind of invasion of our own territory is literally the definition of a civil war. I'm not going to do that. I have no right to do that. I'm going to go, what was Lincoln? What profession was he? Right? People think he was a lawyer. He was actually a rapper, freestyle rapper. He then got into law after. So let's go with law. Let's say his hobby. He was into law as a hobby from Springfield, Illinois. So he's going full lawyer here, right? Like jurisprudentially, according to the letter of the law, cannot interfere. I'm not going to do that. I know what the law says. I'm a freaking lawyer. I trust me. I have no power. But he defends the Fugitive Slave Act. There is much controversy about the delivering up of fugitives from service or labor, and yet the Constitution says no person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another shall, in consequence of any law or regulation, blah, 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 be delivered upon the claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. Thank you, Abraham Lincoln, for helping my earlier brain fog. This is what, before when I blanked out for like legit 13 seconds, that I just read wrong off my notes. That is what South Carolina was angry about. As Lincoln says here, the Constitution says that basically the Fugitive Slave Act is allowable. And South Carolina was saying that when people were escaping to the North, they weren't being returned. And look, those people are violating the Constitution. That's what they were saying. So all thanks to Lincoln for clearing that up for me. Okay. I hold that in contemplation of universal law and the Constitution, the union of these states is perpetual. Perpetuity is implied, if not expressed, in the fundamental law of all national governments. All right, so here's where he goes. He's going first Northerner. He's becoming Abraham Lincoln. He starts off by giving the South some bones. Not going to interfere. Not going to wage war against you guys. I'm not going to wage war against my own people. And yeah, you're right. I personally think the fugitive slave law is evil and gross. And even I think he would say at that time, Lincoln did not believe whites and blacks were equal, sadly. So he was a racist technically, but he was like, this is awful, like capturing, these are human beings. He was not like the full straight, like Southern Nazism of like, oh, these are like subhuman people. Even if I'm against that, well, I think the fugitive slave law is okay, he would say. Then he says, though, first argument, does anybody get married to get divorced? Basically saying, he's like, no one can argue like, oh, well, yeah, irreconcilable differences because that's what we thought all along. Like, no, you got married because it was till death do us part. So Lincoln is saying that's the marriage analogy is the best way for the US. He's like, that's the point of, we entered in this government just because it doesn't explicitly say it never be dissolved. Perpetuity is implied, his words. Otherwise, what the F is the point, right? Like, why would you get into this thing if you're just like, well, if it falls apart, like no one would do that. No one would ever agree to something like that. No sports owner, even I love sports, as you know, but something as dumb and stupid as sports. No sports owner would be like, oh yeah, let's bring a professional football team to Moscow, Idaho. And if it collapses in a year, well, that's cool too. Like there's some, if not perpetuity, it's like it's gonna hopefully be here for a while. Like there's no point, we're not building in failure to the thing, and that's what Lincoln is saying. Again, if the United States be not a government proper, but an association of states, can it, as a contract, be peaceably unmade by less than all the parties who made it? One party to a contract may violate it, but does it not require all to lawfully rescind it? Ooh, like freaking mic drop. He's right. Oh, you Southerners, you're like, we can leave the Union. Yeah, I guess you can, not lawfully though. If we agree to let you leave, no harm, no foul. Your whole analogy, South, that, oh, it's a club, people join and leave. That's fine, but you joined the club and everyone had to ratify you joining, correct? Everyone had to ratify your membership in. So don't you have to ratify you out as well? You don't get just to join and then say, well, whatever you want to bounce, goodbye. That's not cool.
Sure.
What?
Sorry for butting in.
You are not butting in ever. Go.
This is starting to sound like Lincoln's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, though.
You mean he sounds like a politician?
Well, yes, but it's certainly in regards, like, this is the same argument the United Kingdom can make in the late 1700s.
This is the same argument they make with Brexit. People still make this argument today. Yeah,
What can justify that? I think that Abraham Lincoln's side is probably in the right here, but he's not distinguishing enough from what I can tell. He just seems to be saying, look, well, we formed this union. Well, guess what? So did England when it established the 13 colonies.
Yeah.
Why is South Carolina less important than
That's so
colonies
true.
and
That's so true and so funny when these like woke historians on Twitter are like, ooh, Robert putting aside the slavery issue, because everyone, I don't even know why that's an issue. Everyone agrees slavery is evil and terrible. No one's defending that. I don't know why that's like, oh, no one's saying that's good. Obviously, like it's terrible. But just looking at it from like a jurisprudential legal standpoint, oh yeah, Robert Lee and those guys were traitors, but Washington's a hero. He did the exact same thing. Like literally what Lee and those guys leaving the Union, that's what Washington did in leaving the British Empire. There's nothing different, nothing. Oh, they had different American accent, I guess. Like what is the argument? I don't know. Seriously, I really don't know. Like it's because I agree with you. So it's like, and totally, they can't vote for Brexit. That was the wrong solution. Why? Like there's a lot of flimsy ground here. But Lincoln says, wait a second. He says to Ryan Alexander, who will criticize me in 2022 in Moscow, Idaho, before entering upon so grave a matter as the destruction of our national fabric, before you idiots go and do this, break away from the South, he's saying. That's a direct quote. With all its benefits, its memories, and its hopes, would it not be wise to ascertain precisely why we do it? Have you morons actually thought why? While you hazard so desperate a step, while there is any possibility, any portion of the ills you fly from have no real existence, will you, while the certain ills you fly to are greater than all the real ones you fly from, risk the commission of so fearful a mistake? And at that point, I'd like to welcome to the stage, he says, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet for commentary. I don't know what that means. Yeah, he's like, okay, so you can't do it legally, but you're also idiots. Because even if you think it could be legal, do you realize what you're going to do? You're going to shed all this blood, spill this blood. Good for Lincoln with this. I mean, people just run off to war and like, yeah, like right now, let's fight Putin in Ukraine. That will end horrible. I just say right now, that will end, and whatever you feel about geopolitically, we should just let Putin do what he wants to Ukraine, or no, we have an obligation, NATO and the UN, we have to defend Ukraine. However you feel about it, I'm never here to give you my opinions. I mean that. That will end bad. And it'll end bad because it's a just war we have to do. That's an argument. I'm saying no matter what, it will be horrible. If you thought Iraq and Afghanistan is bad, American troops in the ground fighting the Russians in Ukraine will be really, really, really bad. And Lincoln is one of the few guys here who sees that. He's like, this is whatever it comes. He foresees now, brilliant prescience, the 600,000 people that are going to be killed.
Which is why I'm going to force a war by sending people to Fort Sumter.
Nice. You sound like Jefferson Davis is ready to enroll you in his cabinet. And I love this. I want more. I want more. You're exactly right. Is he not?
I don't want war.
Is he not being a provocateur here? Yeah. I don't want war. Why do you have these cannons? What cannons? Don't worry. Why did you call up 75,000 troops? 75,000. Come on. It was 74,999. It doesn't cost $100. It costs $99.99. I know. Yeah, you're right. Is he not being a provocateur kind of? Totally. Excellent. I want all of you doing this kind of stuff in this class. Like, always attack. And you're right. There's a great point for you're saying there. He's not exactly going full dove. I don't want a war, so no matter what, like we're just you guys can just take Fort Sumner. How about we leave Fort Sumner? And you guys have it, and then we can discuss things peacefully out of it. We'll leave. So there's not a chance of this happening. Yeah, exactly. He wants them to fight on it. He wants them to do it. So he gets exactly what he wants. Okay, is there such perfect identity of interests among the states to compose a new union as to produce harmony only and prevent renewed secession? Oh man, if this was like a competition between like women who are like women pop stars, you'd be like, girl, no, you didn't, girl. That's what they would say right here. Because he literally says, they're like, you guys are secessionists? Hold on, hold on, babe. You guys are secessionists. Are you effing kidding me? You want to break away from the union? You're going to form your own union? You mean you guys who your job, you came into being? You want to get divorced from me? And you're going to start like a club of divorced people to have a marriage? That's what he's saying right now. He's like, what you guys do, your way of being is to secede, right? You can't form a union out of secessionists. It's like, he's like saying like, you guys are a bunch of criminals and all of you who, you're just expert criminals are forming an association of good people. It's all based on criminals.
Well, that's a similar thing that happened with the American Revolution, though.
Okay.
They tried to form a
Preach
union
on,
of secessionists,
preach on,
and
go
then
ahead.
less than 100 years later, same thing happens. Guess what? You have secessionists.
The delegate from South Carolina will not be silenced. Preach on. Go ahead. From Arkansas, excuse
But
me.
this argument is also flawed, because to join anything.
Yeah, but isn't life flawed? I mean, what is
Yes,
life?
But to join anything, you need ratification, because we have to allow you in. To leave anything, you rarely do. You can quit your clubs, you can quit your fraternities, you can quit your marriage, you can quit a lot of things. So for him to say
They're fair points.
that you need ratification for you to leave is nonsense. I mean, in the national level for, what we want to accomplish as a nation, of course, he has to argue it, but it's a nonsense legal argument.
Very good argument. I will say about things you can't quit. Keep this in mind. You can quit a lot of things, but not Pringles. Once you pop, you just can't stop.
Or the gym, if you sign a contract.
Cannot. They'll come after
But
you.
there are ways to quit it.
They have real like
Fiery hoops.
they have like mob tactics to make you stay. You want to quit the gym? It would really be a shame if something happened to your business.
Yes, I learned it lesson when I paid $400 for one visit.
$400?
Because I got from a bank.
Okay, who wants to get into the gym business? Make some money.
Never joined the gym. since.
First time you can look around. Next time it's $1,000.
Exactly.
You know what the worst part of the gym is? When a person like who's like lifting good, like doing Olympic lifts, is doing good lifts, and a guy comes up and he's not lifting, and he looks like he can't lift 5 pounds, and he's like, "You can't drop weights in here," and you're like, "Bruh, like look in the mirror." like maybe you spend more time lifting yourself, but just observation about gyms that cost $400.
I have a question though, which we haven't discussed, and maybe you will later. The North. Do you want the South?
Really, they want the South. They want to propose marriage in the first day. They want the South bad.
They want the
Yeah.
South to stay. The majority. of
With them,
Northerners-
marry them. They want to propose marriage.
They
Yes,
do.
they want to make the marriage work. They want to go to marriage counseling with the South. Yeah,
One of the things.
because they want their economic input. They want to be like, yeah, they do not.
Okay.
No, this is a great question, and do not lose your train of thought. This is a great point. Like, really, thank you. Why can secession not happen today? I say, as idiot me, like if Texas has enough signatures and they want to secede, why can they not secede? That's what the people want. Aren't we all about democracy, as the New York Times says every day, right? Defend democracy. Washington Post, whose slogan is "Democracy dies in darkness." A lot of things, but I want to a newspaper like, "You will die if you fall in a dark pit." And you're like, what does that mean? And it's like, just read my paper.
But
But
I don't know if that's what they're trying to prevent or what
I
they're
don't know,
trying to do.
exactly. But it's like, no, but people will never leave Texas leave because we don't want that. We can't set that example. We have to be together. The South, to your question, to your excellent question, 100%. But the North, they have no interest in the South going. If it's peaceable, amicable, they still stay friends. They still attend They have coffee together. So there is no interest in this. The North is going to be a really bad X if the South leaves. They're going to trash talk the North is going to trash talk the South on Twitter and post unflattering photos. If they leave, they're going to burn the whole house down. They're not going to let the South leave. No.
So I think here are some reasons why. Some of them, well, a couple of those reasons, a couple I got from McPherson. So everyone in the Mississippi River system needs to get their goods to port so that they can sell to people who are like not overland, but actually get to other seas. So that means they have to go down the Mississippi River. It's one of the best ways. So everybody who's on those major navigable rivers needs to go down the Mississippi River system. Guess what? Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Mississippi aren't going to have that if there's an entire sovereign nation that gets to say, well, we are going to levy a 20% tariff on everything you bring down our river system. People in Ohio and Illinois and everyone up there in the Midwest, not going to have it. That's a big reason. So, I mean, the second part would just be the loss of control of the Gulf of Mexico. You don't have that trade anymore. You're not able.
No big deal, right?
No big deal. Just sugar canes, which like Americans love sugar. They love sugar in the 1800s. You're not going to get the sugar cane from Cuba and other places.
Right.
Other countries
Excellent, yeah,
have
yeah.
managed to have treaties to do things like using navigable rivers. So I can see the economic interest on the part of the North. But sometimes you feel like you're so different from us that have your own country. We'd rather deal with you independently than have to argue with you constantly.
I agree, but
Very good.
if one day we're just told you can't drive to Spokane because Spokane is not part of a different country, you can't go do your business in Spokane, you're not going to be very, I mean, nobody's going to be very pleased with that. Even if
I
that
think
was
people will
necessary.
be pleased not to go to Spokane.
Okay, if you're making money there, you're.
So in general, the North was like, you're our brothers, we want to stay together. They weren't like, you know what, we'll be glad to be rid of you if we can come to terms on economics.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Very good. Here's how Lincoln, we're going to be done now. I love all of you. That's cheesy, right? I hate that. Like Americans, you know, I'm a hugger. Are you? No, I'm not. Stop. Actually, no, people know. When people want to, I think I'm one of those people like, it's probably like, I'm just so like, it's easy pushover, but if someone wants to hug me, I'll hug them. I don't care. But it's like, I want people to feel comfortable. But it's like, really, like Americans just like, I love this. I love everything. I do love you guys though. Like, it's too bad we don't have the Greek distinctions, like in the most like respect, it's like a respect love. Like, it's like you guys come to this class, drop amazing participation on my head. I just like get zonked out by how much you guys crush. Awesome. So thank you. Can't wait to see you next Monday. Next Monday, we're going to discuss, I have a couple things before we sign off, but just saying next Monday, we're going to talk about secession. No, we did that today, excuse me. I didn't edit the thing on. We're actually jumping ahead to First Manassas / Bull Run, formation of the CSA USA governments. We're a week ahead because we're canceling the in-class quiz and the competition. Earl Aston, you're way too kind, sir. Very good class. Thank you. You wrote a very good comment by you, right back at you. And we can have a competition on who's nicer. No, you first, please. Your comment was better. Thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate that. All of you guys are, yeah, I'll stop. I'm being too cheesy now already, but really, you guys are the best. What I want to finish with is how Lincoln ends this inaugural address. And then the really cool quote, okay? You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. You have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government. Well, I shall have the most solemn one to preserve, protect, and defend it. I want to do like the JFK voice. Sounds better with like this thing. I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained it, must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the nation when again touched, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. That's good writing. So he's like, don't be idiots to the South. Don't secede, right? And if you do, it's your fault. But I'm going to hope you do. I really want you to secretly do that, like you're saying. So please do, wink, wink. Don't, maybe, who knows? I don't know. I can't make up my mind. It's Tuesday. So I have a pumpkin spice latte today, coffee. It's like that. Whatever.
Few possess the foresight of Union soldier James B. McPherson, not the author of the book. Ryan's like, what? Not the same McPherson, who wrote the following on April 20th, 1861. He was smoking this. He wrote this on 420. Let's be honest. Like, I mean, he wasn't in exactly the right frame of mind, but it helped him write this comment. Who on April 20th, 1861, wrote to his friend and Confederate soldier E.P. Alexander this, ready? He writes this after Fort Sumter, quote, we're gonna end the class on this. He writes this a week after the war has begun, and it describes exactly what's gonna happen. And it's almost like he had a time machine. He writes, quote, you have no army, no navy, no treasury, and practically none of the manufacturers and machine shops necessary for the support of armies and for war on a large scale. You are but scattered agricultural communities. You will be cut off from the rest of the world by blockade. Your cause is foredoomed to failure. So on things being foredoomed to failure, I close this class. Thank you all. I'll see you all on Monday.